Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I've got on the screen a video of the lawyer, one of the lawyers from South Africa, who was part of Chamisa, Nelson Chamisa's team challenging the 2018 presidential election results. What he had to say was interesting. I'll just play the audio of it so that you can listen to it.
Experienced, because I had a little taste, very little taste of Zanu PF power. When I came there with Toby and others to fight against the stolen election, the 2018 election, which was stolen, literally. And we went to court with my brother, Tabani. I will never forget that morning when we went into the courtroom in Harare. We had been told by the Minister of Justice that we were going to be given temporary work permits. And when we arrived at the airport, I realized there and then that this was not a child's play. Just as we landed, next to me was a gentleman with dark glasses. And when I went to fill in the forms, the gentleman was there. When I went to take my luggage, the gentleman was there. When we were driving towards the hotel, the gentleman they were not even hiding. Arrived in the morning or in the courtroom, we had prepared. This case was very, very strong. I can assure you, I can tell you now without any fear of contradiction, that election was stolen. We had every piece of evidence to show that the election was stolen. I remember one of the things that I actually thought these people were making it up when we got the evidence. But there was a station, a voting station, I will never forget, I forgot the name now, but it was in the Bulawayo area, where they had this main voting station, and then there were about 7 or 8 surrounding voting areas. And the results that came, this is that I'm not making this up. The results were exactly the same. So if Zanu PF got 592 here, in all the other 9 places, it was 592. If MDC got 45, it was 45. I mean, how can that happen? It's just completely impossible. So we presented all this evidence, but one of the things I'll never forget is the face of that so-called Chief Justice Malaba, who, even when the evidence was being presented, you could just see in his face that he just thought that these people are just wasting our time. We can't wait until the end of this thing. Even the kinds of questions they were asking, the way they were looking at each other when they were asking these questions, you could see that we had no chance. But anyway, so they stopped us from appearing. But in protest, we decided we're not going to leave. We're just going to sit in the courtroom with our court gear, and we sat there the whole day. Tabani was presenting. We were not allowed to talk, but we were giving him notes, and they didn't even like that. When we were giving him notes, they would say, Mr. Boff, come, carry on. So that was a little taste of what the kind of regime we're dealing with.
What I am interested in is what the gentleman said. The elections were stolen. I think everybody in Zimbabwe who had been following Zimbabwean elections up to that stage knew that Zanu PF was rigging the elections. How many election reports by election observers in the country received detailing that the election process was flawed? And yet, again and again, the opposition had elected to participate in those flawed elections without even one reform implemented. I'd like, however, to focus back on the issue of what the gentleman said. There were 9 polling stations in the Bulawayo area where the election results were identical in all 9 polling stations. What was presented by Chamisa's lawyer is slightly different. Let's just listen to what the proceedings were in the actual court itself on the day.
Zimbabwe have now held their recent elections, which went well.
International monitors had to force their way through angry crowds to deliver their verdict. They reported serious flaws in the process. It was not a level playing field. Many injured and 3 dead. The opposition says the shootings and the beatings cannot be justified. And an election in which Zimbabwe dared to dream has instead brought back its worst nightmares. There were running battles through the city centre and the streets echoed to the sound of gunfire.
Zimbabwe have now held their recent elections, which went well.
You are ready now to start.
I am ready.
You may start.
Thank you, my lord. What ZEC has done is to violate the constitution, to violate the Electoral Act in a manner which has ultimately benefited the first respondent. National and Central, page 159, the report by the ZBC. It does 2 things. Number 1, it mentions figures. Number 2, it attributes those figures to a ZEC official. It says by 5:30 p.m., 105,000 people had voted in National and Central. The final figure that one gets from ZEC is that an hour and 30 minutes later, plus 370,000 people voted. Is it humanly possible? But it doesn't end there. Then there is the issue of identical polling results. There are at least 16 polling stations with identical results. Identical results for Chamisa, identical results for Mnangagwa, identical spoiled votes. And in all those places, Mnangagwa not only wins, but wins big. It's like a kid was playing with the figures. That, with respect, is not how an election is conducted.
We'll now give the opportunity to Mr. Kanengoni.
The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission cannot be taken to task to say, why is the voter turnout in my central at this particular level and not at that particular level? Voters behave the way they do. No one knows why. Maybe behavioral scientists may be able to answer the question if they study it.
Mr. Kanengoni, there's the averment that several polling stations showed identical results.
And the simple point we make is that there's no need to be theoretical about it. We have the returns. This is something that happened. We show you the returns. And we've put the returns for 2 of those polling stations here to illustrate the point.
You say it happened?
Yes.
But in his presentation, Pofu says it's actually 16 polling stations where the identical results. You heard it?
Yes, we did. Even in the affidavit, they put a bit more of the polling stations there. But we chose this to illustrate to the court But for the rest, it did happen. It did actually occur.
We'll now go back to the applicant. Why go for speculative conclusions of manipulation?
The point that I wish to make is that this is evidence of manipulation by ZEC after the process. Now, if you go to what they call the primary data, you're going to see manipulated data. So the applicant cannot ask a court to open residue which has already been manipulated. If you go to the residue, you will drink from a poisoned well. When you look at the figures, let's look at those that have been admitted by ZEC. Let's look at the parliamentary tally. When we show that 40,000 people are said to have voted in the presidential election and not in the primary election, and ZEC does not have returns which show that there were people who simply chose to vote in the presidential election, that is the end. Fortunately, they took away my phone. I wanted to just do a quick calculation, but it is, let me just do a quick calculation.
Yes. The point that I think should be remembered here is that while in the court, he raises 16 polling stations with identical results, I think a more dramatic example of that would have been to show that all nine had identical results. Why that wasn't highlighted, history will tell us. The second point is that what we have got to understand is that after the votes are counted, the law clearly says that all the materials relating to that election, the ballot papers they used, the used ones, the unused ones, all the documents relating to the process must be put in a ballot box and sealed. And the people involved in the election process will add their signature to the seal. And if there should be any dispute, this is the sealed ballot box that the court can say it should be brought and examined. That is the purpose of it. And it was not ZEC's lawyer that did not want the sealed ballot boxes opened. It was Chamisa's lawyer. Because he says you don't want to drink from a poisoned well. You are not the one who is drinking from a poisoned well. If ZEC is involved, they're the ones who have got now to admit that they rigged the elections. They're the ones who will be drinking from the poisoned well. Because, like the South African lawyer clearly stated, it is impossible to have a situation where you've got 9 polling stations with exactly the same result. It's just unbelievable. It cannot possibly happen. So why is it that it is Chamisa's lawyer who doesn't want the sealed box opened? If the truth be told, the opposition in Zimbabwe has been participating in flawed elections all along. That is a fundamental truth that cannot be denied. You can go back to 2008 to 2018, during the GNU. There is no rational explanation why in 5 years of the GNU, the opposition failed to implement even one token reform. The only explanation is they were comfortable in the GNU. They didn't want to rock the boat, which is exactly what the Zanu PF cronies were posting about. When they were asked, why are MDC leaders not implementing reforms? Their reply was, MDC leaders have learned to enjoy the benefits of the gravy train. They will not rock the boat. And it is not surprising that post the GNU, opposition leaders have connived with Zanu PF to let Zanu PF rig the elections and at the same time make sure that Zanu PF has legitimacy. This is the game that they've been playing. Here is Professor Jonathan Moyo explaining why anyone who understood the election process in Zimbabwe would know that ZEC was rigging the elections.
Chigumba is the mother of the rigging, and Malaba is the father of the rigging, endorsed what the mother was doing. It is actually scandalous. You see, ZEC is not supposed to be controlled by any authority.
Yeah, it's supposed to be independent.
It is an independent constitutional body. In fact, independent commission. It's a Chapter 12 institution. But ZEC did not run anything important. It never did. The computers were run by Africom. The registration, accreditation, and so forth were run by a CIO company. So between the CIO and the army, they ran the processes, the operations, using their instruments. Either Matsanga, who is actually active, she's employed. She joined the, not joined, she was seconded to the electoral body in 2008 as a divisional intelligence officer. Now she is a director in the CIO. As we speak right now, she's a director, and she was congratulated and rewarded for rigging the 2018 election, and she was given a house in Borodale, a posh mansion in there. So there is a serious problem that, whereas on paper ZEC is supposed to be an independent constitutional body that runs elections transparently, efficiently, and impartially. No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because it does not even itself run. The elections are run for ZEC by the Securocrat.
So the truth of the matter is, Zimbabwe's 2018 elections were stolen indeed. We already knew that. What history is going to tell us is how much the opposition, the MDC, CCC, had been conniving with Zanu PF to rig elections and to get away with it. That story is coming. There can not be any doubt about it. Just as much as there is no doubt that the opposition, MDC, Triple C, have been Zanu PF, Team B in all but name. Playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy. This is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. And what we are going to see in 2028 is the opposition conning their supporters to believe that they are going to win the rigged elections, con them to participate in their millions just to give Zanu PF legitimacy. This is the nightmare scenario that we are facing in Zimbabwe. And the people of Zimbabwe have been slow in realizing that the opposition is in Zanu PF's deep pockets. And the sooner we realize that, the sooner the country can have any hope of implementing the democratic reforms and having free, fair, and credible elections. And finally cure ourselves of the curse of rigged elections and bad governance. Thank you. Have a good day.